The streets of New York were alive with noise, honking taxis, chattering crowds, and the endless rush of people moving from one place to another. Yet, amidst all this chaos, one figure seemed to belong nowhere. A homeless man, hunched over in a worn coat, hat pulled low over his eyes, sat quietly on the corner of 42nd Street. Passersby barely glanced at him, tossing loose change now and then, or laughing when he timidly asked, "Can I play it for food?" Some people stopped for a moment, curious, but soon shrugged and walked away, shaking their heads. Others whispered and snickered behind their hands, convinced he was just another street beggar. But there was something different about him, the way his eyes lingered on the grand piano nearby, a silent intensity that didn't belong to someone living on the streets. There was a spark, a quiet confidence, a presence that even the bustling city couldn't ignore. What no one knew, what most would never guess, was that this man's fingers had once flown across the keys in the world's most prestigious concert halls. He had been a piano legend, celebrated by millions, performing for royalty, presidents, and audiences that could bring entire theaters to their feet. And yet here he was, reduced by circumstance to standing on a cold city corner, his brilliance hidden beneath the dust of hardship. As he slowly approached the piano, a hush fell over the small crowd that had gathered. Skeptical eyes, smirks, and disbelief followed him. Could a homeless man truly play music that would stop the world in its tracks? Could someone laughed at, ignored, and underestimated create a moment no one would ever forget? Today, you're about to witness that story, a story of resilience, hidden talent, and the undeniable power of the human spirit. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment if you want more unforgettable stories that will touch your heart and inspire your soul. The cold morning air bit at the skin as the homeless man shuffled toward the street corner. He carried with him nothing but an old, tattered bag and a quiet dignity that seemed out of place among the harsh city streets. The corner was already alive with movement, vendors shouting over the clatter of traffic, people hustling to work, and tourists snapping pictures of the iconic skyline. Yet amidst all this energy, the man's gaze was locked on a grand piano that sat under a small, covered awning, gleaming like a beacon against the gray morning. "Can I play it for food?" he asked softly, almost to himself. His voice barely carried over the din of the city. A few passersby turned to look, some with curiosity, some with amusement, and others with a dismissive glance. One young man snorted and muttered under his breath, "Yeah, right, he probably hasn't touched a piano in decades." A woman with a designer coat shook her head and walked on, tossing a coin into his worn hat. The man ignored the laughter, the skepticism, and the casual cruelty. He had learned long ago that the world didn't always recognize genius, that people often mistook misfortune for incompetence. As he approached the piano, his fingers brushed lightly against the polished keys. They felt familiar, alive, and full of memory. Memories of grand concert halls, of thunderous applause, of nights when the world seemed to bend to the rhythm of his music. A small crowd had started to gather, drawn by curiosity and perhaps a hint of doubt. Phones were raised, whispers traveled through the group. "Do you think he can really play?" one asked. Another replied, "I mean, he looks homeless, how good could he be?" The man, however, didn't hear their words. He closed his eyes for a brief moment, inhaled the chilly morning air, and remembered why he had devoted his life to music, the joy it brought, the way it spoke when words could not. Then, with a quiet confidence that silenced the city around him, he placed his hands on the keys. The first note rang out, clear and deliberate, cutting through the morning noise. It was delicate, precise, and yet so full of emotion that even the harshest skeptics stopped in their tracks. His fingers moved with grace, memory, and power, telling a story far beyond the streets and the struggles that had brought him here. Slowly, the whispers of doubt turned into gasps of astonishment. People couldn't believe what they were hearing. This was not just music, it was mastery. As the last note of his opening melody lingered in the air, the crowd fell completely silent, a mix of awe, shock, and reverence washing over them. They had come expecting nothing, ready to dismiss him, and yet they were now witnesses to something extraordinary. The first notes still hovered in the chilly morning air when the crowd around the street corner began to react. Initially, there was disbelief. People exchanged glances, eyebrows raised, some shaking their heads in silent confusion. A young woman whispered, "I can't believe it, is he really playing that?" Her friend, holding a coffee cup, nodded, speechless. What they saw didn't match what they expected. A homeless man, ragged and overlooked, creating music that seemed to transcend the streets of New York itself. A few children, curious and unafraid, edged closer, their tiny faces reflecting pure amazement. They had never seen anyone play the piano like this outside a concert hall. Even the hardened pedestrians, those who walk the streets daily without noticing a single thing, were stopped in their tracks. Phones began to appear, cameras raised, people recording every note, every movement. Some whispered words of admiration, others murmured, "He's amazing." The man didn't look at them. His eyes remained closed, his mind immersed in the music. With every key he pressed, he seemed to release years of untold stories, memories of fame, moments of triumph, and the sorrow of being forgotten. His fingers danced effortlessly, yet each note carried emotion so raw that it touched the hearts of everyone watching. There was a rhythm that spoke of resilience, of hope, of survival. The very air seemed to vibrate with the power of his talent. Slowly, skepticism gave way to awe. A businessman, who had initially scoffed, whispered to his colleague, "I've never seen anything like this, he could be performing in Carnegie Hall." Even the street performers nearby, usually busy competing for attention, stopped to watch, mouths slightly open in amazement. Someone in the crowd muttered, "This man, he's a legend." Then, the music shifted. The once gentle and melodic notes grew bold, commanding. Passersby felt the intensity of his story through sound alone, the struggles of a life gone sideways, the heartbreaks, the triumphs, and the undying passion for music. The contrast was staggering. The streets, harsh and cold, filled with judgment and neglect, and this man, standing at the center, creating beauty that demanded respect. As the final chords of this piece echoed into the morning, the crowd remained silent for a long moment, holding their breath as if afraid to break the spell. Then, slowly, applause began, hesitant at first, then swelling into cheers that could rival any concert hall ovation. People clapped, some shouted words of encouragement, and a few even wiped tears from their eyes. What had begun as doubt and laughter had transformed into collective admiration. In that moment, the homeless man, once invisible, dismissed, and overlooked, became the undeniable center of attention. His music had spoken where words could not, revealing a story of brilliance hidden beneath the most unlikely exterior, and everyone there knew they had just witnessed something extraordinary, a moment that would stay with them forever. As the echoes of the final chord faded into the busy morning streets, something extraordinary happened. The crowd, still buzzing with awe, began to lean closer, whispering among themselves. Phones were out, videos recording every second of what had just transpired. People who had initially mocked or ignored him were now staring in disbelief. How could someone who appeared so down and out create music that touched the soul so deeply? A young man in a business suit, still holding his briefcase, muttered to his friend, "There's something different about him. It's like I've seen that technique somewhere before." Others nodded, some whispering names of famous pianists. Rumors started to circulate quickly. Could this be? "I think he's a professional. Is he a concert pianist in disguise?" The homeless man opened his eyes slowly, revealing a calm, knowing gaze. He smiled faintly, acknowledging the crowd without saying a word. His fingers hovered above the keys as if to remind everyone that this was not a trick, not a performance staged for shock value. This was real. The passion, the skill, the emotion, every note was genuine, every movement a testament to a life dedicated to music. Then, a voice from the crowd broke through the murmurs. "Wait a minute, that hand positioning, those chords, that's him. The piano legend." Gasps spread instantly. People turned toward the source of the voice, eyes widening. Could it really be the man who had once sold out concert halls worldwide, who had been praised by critics, lauded by celebrities, and adored by fans across the globe, now standing on a New York street corner in tattered clothes, playing for spare change? The realization hit the crowd like a wave. Smartphones were raised higher, voices filled with disbelief and admiration. A young woman exclaimed, "I read about him. He was supposed to retire in Europe, but he's here." On the street, children clung to their parents' hands, watching in wide-eyed amazement, while older adults whispered stories they remembered from newspapers, television, and social media years ago. The man didn't speak. He simply continued to play, letting the music do all the talking. And as he played, the story of his life unfolded through melody, the fame, the isolation, the heartbreak, and finally, the unexpected humility that life had imposed upon him. The irony was impossible to ignore. The world had once celebrated him, but it had forgotten him. Yet here, Amidst strangers, he still commanded reverence with the most powerful tool he had ever possessed, his music. By the time the last note lingered in the cold morning air, tears had appeared on multiple faces. People who had once ignored him now bowed their heads in respect. The street was no longer just a busy corner, it had transformed into a concert hall, alive with emotions that no one could ignore. The legend was real, and he was right there before them, proving that true talent, no matter how hidden or forgotten, can never be silenced. The applause still lingered in the air, but the atmosphere shifted subtly. The initial shock and awe had given way to a deeper, more intimate feeling, one of connection. The homeless man looked out over the crowd, and for the first time, he noticed the eyes that weren't filled with judgment or skepticism but with pure, unfiltered admiration. Strangers who had never even glanced his way now saw him for what he truly was, a man of immense talent and enduring spirit. Among the crowd, a young boy tugged at his mother's sleeve, whispering, "Mom, he's like the heroes we read about in stories." The woman smiled, nodding quietly, her own eyes misty. Nearby, an elderly man muttered, "I haven't felt this moved by music in decades." In that moment, the street corner had become more than a performance space, it was a sanctuary of human emotion, a place where talent could not be ignored and the soul of the city itself seemed to pause to listen. The homeless man paused briefly, his fingers hovering above the keys, as if sensing the shift in energy around him. He took a deep breath, closing his eyes, and began a new piece, slower this time, softer, almost fragile. It was a melody that spoke of struggle, of nights spent alone, of battles fought silently in the mind and heart. Every note carried a piece of his story, a fragment of the life that had brought him from concert halls to the cold streets. People's reactions intensified, some were visibly moved, wiping away tears, clutching their hearts, or whispering words of encouragement. Others simply stood in awe, unable to speak, feeling the raw power of music speak directly to their emotions. It was a transformation, both for the man and for those who had underestimated him. His past fame was irrelevant here, what mattered was the undeniable proof of his resilience and mastery. A small group of musicians, drawn by the notes that floated above the busy streets, gathered nearby. They watched in astonishment, exchanging glances that said without words, "We are witnessing greatness." One even stepped closer, murmuring, "I've seen legends perform in concert halls, but this is something different. Something human." The man's music had transcended the superficial boundaries of status, clothing, and wealth, it demanded attention purely for the soul it carried. As the final chords of his soft, haunting melody faded, a hush fell over the crowd. The silence was profound, almost reverential. People weren't just clapping anymore, they were reflecting, absorbing, and internalizing a story of triumph over invisibility, a life of brilliance hidden by circumstance. And somewhere deep inside, everyone present felt inspired, reminded that talent, passion, and the human spirit cannot be confined or ignored, no matter the hardships faced. The crowd had grown larger now, drawn not only by curiosity but by the irresistible pull of extraordinary talent. Word spread quickly through whispers and social media posts, "The piano legend is here." On the street, playing for everyone, people who had hurried past earlier were now stopping, some even running back, eager to witness the phenomenon unfolding before their eyes. The homeless man remained calm, his fingers poised over the keys, his presence commanding attention without a word. The energy around him was electric, yet intimate, as if the bustling streets of New York had faded into silence just for him. He began a new composition, a blend of passion and precision, weaving emotions into every note. Each chord seemed to narrate a chapter of his life, fame, loss, hardship, and unbroken hope. The audience, previously skeptical, now hung on every sound, caught in the spell of a man who had transformed tragedy into artistry. A young woman recorded every second on her phone, whispering to her friend, "He's incredible, I've never seen anything like this. He's not just a pianist, he's a storyteller." Children danced along to the rhythm, their innocent joy amplifying the beauty of the moment. Older adults swayed gently, eyes closed, memories and emotions intertwining with the music. Strangers became connected through shared awe, their hearts beating in sync with each resonant chord. Then, something miraculous happened. A man in a tailored suit, who had been observing silently from the back, stepped forward. He was a talent scout for a prestigious music foundation, and he had been searching for someone exactly like this, a prodigy hidden in plain sight. His voice trembled with excitement as he called out, "Sir, I must speak with you. Your talent, It's extraordinary." The homeless man didn't stop playing, he simply nodded, acknowledging the man's presence while allowing the music to speak for itself. The crowd erupted with applause once again, louder than ever. People cheered, some crying tears of joy and astonishment. The spectacle was no longer just about a man playing piano, it had become a story of redemption, proof that genius can emerge from the most unlikely places. Conversations ignited around the streets. "He deserves a stage, not this corner. This is the real definition of talent. I can't believe he was homeless, and now look at him." As the final notes lingered in the crisp morning air, the homeless man lifted his gaze, taking in the transformed faces around him. From ridicule and doubt to admiration and reverence, he had reclaimed his rightful place, not just as a pianist, but as a symbol of resilience, hope, and the unstoppable power of the human spirit. The world had laughed at him, underestimated him, and ignored him, but now, every eye, every ear, and every heart bore witness to his triumph. The morning sun climbed higher, casting a warm glow over the street corner where the extraordinary had unfolded. The crowd slowly dispersed, still talking, still amazed, and still carrying with them the memory of a performance that transcended time and circumstance. The homeless man remained by the piano for a few more moments, fingers resting gently on the keys, a serene smile on his face. For him, the music had always been more than fame or recognition, it was the language of the soul, the expression of a life lived fully despite hardship. People approached him cautiously now, offering congratulations, hugs, and words of admiration. Some handed him business cards or invitations to perform, recognizing the unmatched talent they had just witnessed. Strangers who had earlier ignored him now stood in respect, humbled by the reminder that greatness often hides in plain sight, and that no appearance can define the depth of a person's skill or spirit. The man packed his belongings slowly, careful not to disturb the piano, now bathed in sunlight. Each movement was measured, graceful, a reflection of a lifetime of discipline and artistry. As he walked away, the whispers of the crowd followed him. "What a story, what a life, what a man." And though he disappeared into the bustling streets, the impact of his music lingered, like an echo in the hearts of everyone who had witnessed it. This was more than a street performance, it was a lesson, a revelation, a testament to resilience, talent, and the enduring power of the human spirit. In that fleeting moment, a homeless man became a legend once more, proving that no setback, no ridicule, and no circumstance can diminish true greatness. And as the city returned to its usual rhythm, one truth remained clear: the world will always notice brilliance when it refuses to stay hidden, and sometimes, the most extraordinary stories emerge in the most ordinary places.